Hello, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us for another edition of House Calls, a Tuesday evening program that is unmissable. That's because it is the program that provides you with cutting-edge information, hearing from the very best doctors in their fields, and we have covered such an eclectic mix of issues on this show, and this evening is no different. This evening is the final day of September, and September is known for two particular causes. One is prostate cancer awareness. In fact, our inaugural show for the season focused on prostate cancer. It's also Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and on this, the final day of September, we zoom in on this consequential and crucial issue. It's an issue that is near and dear to the hearts of so many families in this country and around the region and around the world. This evening, we have the distinct pleasure of having a husband and wife team to discuss this issue. For the first time ever on House Calls, a husband and wife team, both doctors, discuss a particular issue this evening, childhood cancer. It's my distinct pleasure to be joined by Dr. Christopher Sulowski to my far left. He's a consultant at the Celeste Bird Medical Center. Dr. Sulowski is also a survivor of childhood cancer. He'll talk about his experience. He'll talk about very, very poignant example that he's had to demonstrate to so many people around the world. He has lived this issue, so he speaks with authority on it as well. His wife to my immediate left is Dr. Nicole Rakowski, who is a doctor is a specialist in health management, and of course she's also an authority on health and wellness, and she can speak with us about the health management, the management side of this very, very crucial issue as well. So thank you so much for joining us, whether you're joining us on television or online. Welcome to another powerful edition of House Calls. Very good evening to you, Dr. Rakowski and Dr. Sulowski. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us here today. We're very excited to talk about this issue. So it's definitely prevalent across the world, as you had mentioned, right? It's not just prevalent in Antigua and Barbuda, but we see this globally.
Absolutely.
So this is something that I think, the awareness of it, understanding it, the intrinsic part of it, but also the management is so crucial.
Absolutely. So let's start off with a little bit more about yourselves, starting with lady before gentleman. So please forgive me. So I'll hear from your wife first, Dr. Rakowski, Nicole Rakowski. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your health management focus, and you're also an enthusiast for health and wellness and fitness as well.
I am. So I'm actually a competitive bodybuilding athlete. So from Canada originally. I mean, both Chris and I are from Poland, more of our ancestral roots, but we're both from Canada here today. And myself, I'm a competitive bodybuilding athlete, competed, different areas around the world. I've given TED Talks about fitness, wellness, what it means to live a healthy, active lifestyle, what it means to have the appropriate diet, not having a sedentary lifestyle, what that does for complex chronic conditions, and really sort of having that holistic outlook. So I've spoken internationally. Both Chris and I have, traveled the world, I think, speaking at various international conferences of more than 10,000 people in an audience at once, just to really drive home the point of the importance of health and wellness, but also speaking to it from a global health perspective.
Indeed. Before I talk about your health management background and your PhD in that, you had a serious accident in, remind me of the country?
Yes. So this was back in 2017. I had a life-altering accident. And, they really say that you see these bright white lights followed by this out-of-body experience prior to crossing the bridge. And I remember seeing the faces of several paramedics hovering above me before everything just went completely blank. And I would wake up at different points in time, and I remember at one point I was looking at someone right in the face and I said, "Am I going to die?" And this individual just said, "Not on my watch." His name was Lee, from a firefighter from California. And to sort of give this story a bit of a nutshell, so myself and two good friends were traveling in Iceland. And on our second last day of our hike, we traveled to this beautiful location just outside of Reykjavik, this beautiful bridge crossing, and it was a hot spring. So right before I was about to get into the water, everyone was sort of swimming in this hot stream. I was the first one to step down into this mud pool. And to my dismay, essentially the ground beneath me completely broke through. So before I knew it, I was slowly sinking. And they were saying, thank God that I didn't actually have my hiking boots on, because they would have melted right into my bone and the deep fascia. So I started screaming on the top of my lungs, I'm burning, I'm burning. I knew that something was not right. And my two friends rushed over. They sort of pulled me out of this, which we later discovered was a geothermal vent that was feeding the entire source of the river. So they sort of pulled me back away from it, and I looked down at my raw flesh. And essentially, I did not have much left. It was blistered, there was red, skin peeled to the sides. And at first, I was in agonizing, excruciating pain, but then I went into complete shock. Iceland's often known as the island of hot and cold, right? So hypothermia in the air, but also dealing with the gravity of the third-degree burns that I had from my legs. So this entire event turned into a huge rescue mission between trying to get from there to the Icelandic hospital, then back home to Canada, where I was in the burn unit, undergoing severe and substantial treatment. So those are some photos there from the rescue mission on the bottom right there. But, I think the adversity really didn't stop there. Like, I was involved in competitive sports my entire life. So to me, I was told that I would never really be able to walk again, and luckily, miracle happened and I was. But years later, as I continued to play with sports and become very competitive, continuous concussions and blows to the head allowed me to have many different retinal detachments and cataract surgery, at the age of 27. So again, I was told that I would never be able to compete in competitive sports for the rest of my life, and I would eventually, sort of the conditions that I had would lead to blindness. So I'm partially blind in my right eye, and I've recovered very well from the scars and the burns. But how does this relate to the whole topic of cancer? It's not just survivorship, but it's about how do you come out stronger on the other side?
And you have, certainly.
Absolutely.
I mean, your life is a miracle itself.
Exactly. And a lot of people don't realize when they look at you, people don't understand that I can't see from this side forward, that I see floaters every single day, that I don't have, sensation in my left leg, right? So these are all the small things that I think we take for granted. But I know that Chris also has an extremely powerful story from his childhood as well. So all this is sort of really built up that, makes us stronger individuals. And hence we sort of have that background to be able to help others that are going through similar pains or struggles.
Because you've lived it.
Exactly. We've lived that experience.
Our husband and wife team on House Calls is a testament to resilience, tenacity, the strength of the human spirit. So you've heard from Dr. Nicole Rakowski, who is, of course, has a PhD in health management. She's also an enthusiast for health and wellness, and also survivorship. She'll talk about that a bit later on as well. Let's hear now from her husband, Dr. Christopher Sulowski, who is, as I said, a consultant at Celeste Bird Medical Center. And of course, his focus is on, he's a leading pediatric casualty. He is consultant leading pediatric casualty at Celeste Bird Medical Center. He's a childhood cancer survivor as well. Dr. Sulowski, thank you so much for joining us. Let's talk about that first. Your journey, you have another extraordinary journey. We're going to talk about childhood cancer, but just your journey into healthcare. Let's talk about that.
Sure. No, it's an honor to be here, and thank you for letting us share our stories. And Nicole and I, as we said, have shared with others and around the world our stories, not to necessarily draw attention to ourselves, but to just highlight the issues and to reach out to others. And the number of individuals that can relate in their own way to both what Nicole and I have gone through is really, really rewarding, and adds a depth to what we do that is really hard to explain, but we value the opportunity. So my journey into healthcare, really, I made the decision to go into medicine because of my love of science and the love of helping others. I always knew that I wanted to become a pediatrician specifically, really working with partly our most vulnerable population in some regards, but also one that, if done correctly, has so many years ahead of them that they can contribute back. And what we do at the beginning really does come out at the end is something I firmly believe in. So I'll go back to my beginning, and I don't remember it in as much detail as Nicole does, because I was 3 years old at the time, and I have certain flashbacks and certain memories, but ultimately what happened was just before my 3rd birthday, and the picture, the screen that we had earlier with me sitting on Santa Claus's lap was one that my parents will always remember as I'm smiling because I really don't know what's going on at that time. And that was a time of, my birthday is actually on Christmas Day of all the days, but sitting on Santa's lap there,
that's in the top middle,
on the top middle
picture,
there,
right.
that's myself many decades ago now, but that was a picture that my parents had a bittersweet memory of because they were not at that time explaining to me what was going on because they also didn't know. But at the time we were waiting for a biopsy result, and that unfortunately, or well, now I can say looking back, was the right biopsy result because I was diagnosed with a specific type of childhood cancer known as non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And with that type of cancer, it's specific to the lymph nodes. I have a much smaller scar than Nicole is, but under my right armpit is my kind of lifelong reminder of what happened back then. I was treated at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto by Dr. Sheila Weitzman, someone I owe a lot to. And I was treated for an intensive 6 to 8 month period before being released from hospital and continuing my journey through childhood cancer at home. I remember being slightly older and returning to the hospital for lumbar punctures, which is part of the surveillance program that when you have certain types of cancers, unfortunately, or now fortunately is part of an adequate screening program. So that is already after the diagnosis is made. But I remember being around 6 or 7 years old, going to the hospital, rolling up into a ball and having a lumbar puncture done. And again, at the age of 6, you don't really understand why you're doing this, but between the healthcare team that was looking after me and my parents, they explained that this is for the best, this is what has to be done. And I guess fast forwarding a little bit in my journey there, I did well at school, and both Nicole and I very much value academics.
Well, Chris did exceptionally well. I just have to interrupt him there. He did not
He's just being modest,
He did
right?
not do well. He was the top of the class
Yes,
in
very
Toronto.
good.
He was
Very
the top.
good, very
Well,
good.
that-
Before you
yeah.
continue on with school,
Yeah.
lumbar puncture, what does that entail?
So what that is it's a procedure. Many pediatricians and emergency physicians will be skilled in doing this, as well as, of course, our oncologists. And it involves inserting a needle into the back, into the lower back, between the vertebrae, between the bones of our spine, to take a sample of cerebrospinal fluid, the same fluid that coats our brain, travels down our back. We go low down in the back for the procedure because we want to avoid the major nerves and the conus medullaris ends higher up in the back. So without getting too technical, it's a needle placed into the lower back to get a sample of fluid that allows you to look for, in my case, cancer cells, and to monitor and screen for that. I'd say probably the most common reason to do a lumbar puncture is looking for something like meningitis or infection, but certainly oncologists will do that as part of their screening depending what type of childhood cancer you have.
Okay. Just want to be sure that our viewers are following
course,
in terms of
happy to explain that.
lumbar puncture. Okay, please. And as your wife said, you did exceptionally well in school. You're not going to say it, but you're being honest. So and that led you to continuing
So
into medicine?
that led me to go into medical school. So I studied and completed all of my studies at the University of Toronto in Ontario, Canada, where we're from. And I went through my Bachelor of Science, my medical school, my residency, and then also my fellowship in pediatric emergency medicine. So in Canada, we refer to it as the pediatric emergency medicine. Here, it's the pediatric casualty at the Sir Leicester Bird Medical Center. But the idea is the same, that we are really the front line in terms of seeing patients, diagnosing them, and that involves oftentimes being one of the first individuals to hear from parents about their concerns, and many times parents will ask me, is this a sign of a brain tumor? Is this a sign of cancer? This is what I've Googled or nowadays ChatGPT'd and found that this is my concern. So well-meaning, caring parents come in very, very frightened, very scared, sometimes very knowledgeable, sometimes not very knowledgeable. But it's our job as part of the Pediatric Emergency Department, Pediatric Casualty here, to make those key diagnoses when time matters and when you don't want to miss something that could be life-threatening for a child.
So you've really put into, and thank you so much for summarizing. So while we've heard from both of you on your extraordinary journeys in a nutshell, and you've conflated both the extraordinary personal journeys and also your health journeys in one. So really appreciate it. Our viewers appreciate it as well. In terms of you mentioned the childhood cancer that you had, and you have recovered from that. You're an extraordinary survivor of that. Is that one of the more common childhood cancers?
So I think it's certainly among the top 5 cancers that children will be unfortunately diagnosed with and are common. So I would say the number 1 cancer really around the world that we see is leukemia, and specifically in kids, ALL is a very specific childhood cancer. So that is a cancer of the white blood cells. It involves the cancer cells proliferating or multiplying in the bone marrow. And our bone marrow is really the key for what creates our blood. It creates our red blood cells, it creates our white blood cells, and it creates our platelets. So I guess jumping ahead a little bit to talk about something we want to look for is when children have leukemia, they may not know it. They may present with very, very common symptoms. Symptoms that we see all the time in many of our children: fever, rash, they don't feel well, they are decreased in energy. So certainly, I'm sure many of the parents watching today have seen those exact symptoms in their children. And we're not here to scare anyone. In fact, we'd like to educate and show maybe what are the symptoms that would make us, as professionals in the healthcare world, think about cancer and actually then do the testing that's required. So I think one of the ways that we look for leukemia, and specifically what I look for when I'm seeing a child, and of course ruling that out in them, is yes, many children have fever every single day of the year, but is this fever going for more than 10 days? Have they had fever every single day of over 100 degrees Fahrenheit or over 38 degrees Celsius? Are they consistently having that day in, day out for more than 10 days? So although many of our children have fevers lasting for more than 10 days is certainly rare. We look for rashes, and then again, many children will present to the emergency department or their family physician with varying types of rashes. And there are specific, one thing I always do, and I'm sure my patients will see this, is that we obviously sanitize our hands, and then we gently push on the rash, and we look to see if it blanches. What does that mean? It means that it goes away even just for a moment with a very light pressure. And that tells us that the child may be sick, may have an illness, but that in that spot where we've seen that rash, the blood is still within the blood vessels, which is where it should be. It hasn't leaked out into the skin. Much like when you have a bruise. When you have a bruise, if you push on it, it won't go away. It's not common, and obviously bruising is a sign of trauma or of something as simple as a ball hitting them.
Right.
But when you have that all over the body, obviously in not any specific pattern, and you're wondering, why is my child covered in these little dots that when I push on them, they don't go away? Medically, we call that petechiae, but for the common individual, I say, does your child's rash go away when you push on it? If it doesn't, that's something that's a little bit more concerning for all our healthcare professionals out there. So again, a fever that goes for longer than 10 days, a rash that really doesn't go away with even gentle pressure. And the one final thing I'll say on this, again, as part of our screening and something we look for, and I'm sure our parents are going to watch for in their children, is we often talk about weight loss. And weight loss in children, if they're sick and they're not eating or they're having some vomiting, yes, they can drop a pound or 2 here or there. But when you start looking at our charts, as I know many of our physicians keep very good records of our patients, has this child lost more than 10% of their birth weight, or 10% of their weight, their last recorded weight, because that's a significant amount. And that's more than your average week of vomiting or stomach flu. That's an amount of weight that, we look at, and it kind of comes up as our later slides on type B symptoms. And those are things that we really watch for when it comes to childhood cancer, and some of the things that I wanted to mention maybe early on in the show, and I'm sure there'll be some questions about it.
Absolutely. We'll delve into those topics a bit later on as well. Before we go on to, we'll get close to our first break, I also want to show you the extraordinary story of a case of childhood cancer right here in Antigua, Barbuda. An extraordinary case, an extraordinary level of resilience shown by one of this country's children who's battling childhood cancer. Before that though, let's show you 2 quotations from our 2 guests. Husband and wife, as we said, Dr. Rakowski and Dr. Sulowski. Let's look at the next slide, which is actually the one just from their bios. And that takes us to their quotes. Dr. Christopher Sulowski: "Adversity does not break us, it reveals the strength we never knew we had." And remember that quotation as we go into our video with one of our childhood cancer survivors. His wife, Dr. Nicole Rakowski, says, survival is not the end, it is the beginning of a stronger story. And this, of course, representative, emblematic of their own personal stories and emblematic of the kind of resilience and grit and tenacity that childhood cancer survivors and their families continue to show. So with those quotations in mind, take a look at this extraordinary video, which we've actually covered on ABS News as well, of a young child with childhood cancer and his extraordinary story. Take a look.
Hello everybody, my name is Keyshawn John. I am 11 years old. I was diagnosed in March of 2025 with Hodgkin's lymphoma stage 4 cancer, which is a cancer of the lymph nodes. My cancer is located in my stomach, which has caused me a lot of pain over the last few years. This has been a very difficult and painful journey for me. My mother was always open with me about what was happening, so I was always aware of what was happening to me. When I got to Colombia, the doctors and the nurses were so kind and helpful, and within days of being admitted, I was no longer having pain. Chemo was a real journey because I had a few complications when I first started. But the doctors did their thing and I was able to successfully complete chemo. Throughout my journey, I went through some difficult times and some good times. My difficult times were when I started my first session of chemo and my blood pressure was really low, so I had to get a blood transfusion. After the transfusion, I was admitted to the ICU for over a week. My feeling right now is really tired. The medication that I was taking made me gain weight and makes me hungry really fast. The chemo makes me have body aches and muscle spasms, which can be very painful at times. I have met a lot of people throughout my journey, but not people my age, so sometimes I feel sad because I have no one to talk to or play with. Really happy because the good times were when I finished my chemo and I was able to go exploring. I am really happy because I am finished chemo and rung the bell and will soon be finding out if I will need radiation or not. Looking forward to beating cancer. Thank you all for listening.
Oh, what a story. Keyshawn John is just 11 years old. Remember that, 11 years old. And his story, already it's almost as if he's lived such a life already, just a battle with cancer. And you heard him say he's rung the bell with chemotherapy, looking to see whether or not there'll be need for radiotherapy. And he wants to beat cancer. That's his spirit. That's a spirit that also radiates from our two guests, husband and wife, guests here on this program talking about childhood cancer. He is essentially the epitome of the spirit that we should all be showing, whatever our adversity is in life. And he, at that young age, is affected by such a threat to his life, and he has its spirit. Fantastic. Your reactions, starting with you, Dr. Sulowski.
Well, one thing that I noticed that Keyshawn said is, my mother kept me informed every step of the way. So from the health management perspective, that is something that really speaks volumes when it comes to patient engagement, patient care, and making sure that they're completely aware of what is happening, right? I know that Chris had gone through different situations where, you know, he was very young at an age, so his mom didn't communicate everything, but she did amazing at then, you know, being able to follow up and keep up to date as to what is going on. Communicating to your child so that they understand what is happening makes such a big difference.
And he's able to engage with the issue. I mean, he's able to explain it in such a powerful way.
And he can articulate it in such a way. And Chris was as well the same because of his parents, because of his mother, right? And I think it makes such a difference, whether it's a mother, whether it's a caretaker, a father, a cousin, a brother, a friend. If you're there as part of the individual's journey, and you know, we all need those supports in life. So that was something that really stuck out to me from this story.
Absolutely, and we're going to go into that issue of the modalities for health management going forward as well, and the engagement with the child. Dr. Sulowski, his experience, your reaction to what he was.
I think my first reaction is really to congratulate him on what he's done and how he's shown a level of bravery that is sometimes hard to appreciate if you haven't gone through it yourself. And what I always remember is that it is a chronic disease. There is the moment of diagnosis, there is the shock, there is the different aspects at the very beginning, but then what can become for you or your family or the cancer survivor, or in this case him, it's never old news for you. Right? Oh yeah, well, yeah, he had that a few years ago. No, his battle goes on. The word remission is one that is used when the cancer is finally thought to be gone, but you always worry about whether it will come back or not. And that's something that is hard to explain, hard to talk about. And I do sincerely hope that he gets into that remission phase if he's not there already. I think it's a great show of bravery, and I congratulate him and his family and the team looking after him for getting him to where he is already.
Yeah. Extraordinary story indeed. Taking us to our first break here. Kishon John, as I said, 11 years old, talking about his chemotherapy journey, having successfully completed that. Let's hope that that's the end of his treatment and that he's now in remission. We'll, of course, keep you across his story, but what a story of tremendous bravery and grit and determination beyond his years, certainly showing that belying his years. Our guests are Dr. Christopher Sulowski, who is a consultant at Celeste Bird Medical Center. He's leading the pediatric casualty at the hospital. And, of course, his wife is Dr. Nicole Rakowski, who is an expert in health management, both from Toronto, Canada, and both are joining us to talk about the extraordinary personal stories and how that has driven and has informed their health journeys as well. When we come back, we'll delve into the issues here in Antigua, Barbuda with childhood cancer. How prevalent is childhood cancer here? What are the main types of childhood cancer? And how can you support the families who are dealing with their children who are confronting childhood cancer? When we come back, much more on this powerful, riveting edition of House Calls, a Tuesday evening program dedicated to bringing you the very best medical information and medical advice. When we come back, much more. Stay with us.
I had a really good time tonight.
So did I.
Life moves fast. Be prepared with Sagicor. Learn more at sagicorlife.com.
Announcing Antigua's newest full-service pharmacy, Omnicare, situated in the North Walk Commercial Center at the corner of Friars Hill and Wetherills Road, offering a specialized pharmaceutical and healthcare service to the rural North community by qualified, experienced, and friendly pharmacists and skincare professionals. Convenient location, ample parking, private consultations, same-day drop-off and pickup service. Senior citizens and students enjoy a 10% discount. Contact us at 462-4411. WhatsApp 268-727-6664. We're open Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Omnicare Pharmacy, the pharmacy that cares.
Honey, how about us go to English Hour for lunch?
Oh, I'm not feeling well, babe. You go by yourself. Bring me back something later.
All right.
All right. Hey, babe, meet me by Cedar Valley Golf Course. We're going to roll till dusk. I'm taking you for lunch.
A
According to Jamaicans, Slijay is getting bun. And we are not talking about the kind that is sold at Dawn Till Dusk Bakery. But let's not jump to conclusions just yet. Dawn Till Dusk Bakery now has 2 amazing locations, Cedar Valley Main Road and Long Street, St. John's. Don't miss our Saturday and Sunday morning specials. Dawn Till Dusk Bakery, a place for the entire family. And well, you see what we mean.
Here on House Calls, pictures there done by the Micah Kitt Foundation in collaboration with the pediatric department at Celeste Bird Medical Center. This happened on Sunday of this week, and it is of course a walk to raise awareness. Of course, it's Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, to raise awareness of course Micah Kitt, a childhood cancer survivor as well, and that's extraordinary. Of course, Dr. Siobhan Bell Jarvis, Medical Director at Celeste Bird Medical Center, with members of the family of Micah Kitt as well. So what a powerful way. And of course, gold, I think that's the color of childhood cancer, if I'm not mistaken. So of course, wearing the colors there and showing the support, showing the love for the families, and of course, raising awareness. Because it's not just about September, because at the end of September, today is the last day, but 365 days of the year, we want you to bear that in mind. We want you to build the awareness and to build the support for those families as well. Still with us, Dr. Christopher Sulowski, who is a consultant at Celeste Bird Medical Center, consultant who is leading the pediatric casualty there at the hospital, and his wife is Dr. Nicole Rakowski, who is expert in health management. Both have gone through extraordinary personal stories, which have, of course, given even greater heft to their medical stories and their medical journeys as well. Thank you so much for staying with us. Before we continue, Dr. Sulowski, your extraordinary story is even more extraordinary when you consider that you were diagnosed at the age of 3. And talk to us about the doctor who diagnosed you, and many years later, what happened?
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, I grew up in Toronto. I did all of my education there. I was treated at the Hospital for Sick Children, which is one of the world leading hospitals when it comes to children's care. And I was fortunate enough to be treated there, and that was at the age of 3. Then, as I said, at the University of Toronto, which is affiliated with many of the downtown hospitals, including the Hospital for Sick Children, I became what in Canada would be called a resident. Here in Antigua, we refer to them as house officers, but I became a house officer at the Hospital for Sick Children, working in the same hospital that I was diagnosed at. And not only that, but Dr. Sheila Weitzman, who at the beginning of her career had diagnosed me, was now approaching the end of her career, 25 years after first diagnosing me, was my attending. And so she handed over as the consultant to me as the senior house officer the entire pediatric oncology ward for one weekend that I will never forget because of the full circle moment that it really represented for me in my journey. And I'm not going to pretend that I remembered her from age 3, but I do remember seeing her at my follow-up visits, at my screening visits. And then to be her senior house officer and to take on that responsibility even for a short weekend, a short period of time, was truly a full circle moment for me and one I'm very proud of.
Passing the torch,
yes.
Passing the baton, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
And must have been a poignant time for you, a poignant occasion for you as well, just to reflect on the fact that at the age of 3, she was the one who diagnosed you.
Yes.
Wow, powerful. We'll look now into the specific situation in Antigua, Barbuda, with both of you, and you can walk me through this, please, because you've provided some slides for us, and in fact, if we could go to the slide about the stats you need to know, this speaks about it. Just walk me through this, please, Dr. Sulowski, and then I'll hear from Dr. Rakowski.
Well, I'll let Nicole speak to the health management part of it first.
That's fine. Sure.
So in Antigua and Barbuda itself, so Antigua is establishing a national childhood cancer registry to really track cases and demographics. So we're seeing all across the globe, not just Antigua, but everywhere, we're lacking the actual statistics for the childhood cancer rates. So, you know, we're seeing that a lot are being underrepresented because they are not being diagnosed appropriately. So some of the different symptoms that Dr. Sulowski said to look out for, you know, a lot of individuals are just not certain whether this warrants bringing their child into the emergency department, whether this warrants actually bringing someone in to be seen. So, but the good side of of this is that infant mortality. So it's dropped from 21.6 to 7.5 per 1,000 live births. So just from 2000 to 2022, we've seen a 65% decrease that's been on the island. Now, if we're looking at global childhood cancer facts, so there's 400,000 plus new cases per year in children under the age of 20. So just letting that sink in for a moment. And greater than 80% of those are cured in high-income countries versus less than 30% in low or middle-income countries. So if we really look at the impact, that is 11.5 million years of healthy life lost globally. That was just in 2017 alone.
Frightening. How does Antigua and Barbuda compare with the globe in terms of incidence and mortality?
So I'll let Chris speak a little bit more to that, but one thing I will say, and I truly want to thank Dr. Leslie Walwyn and Dr. Ricardo Hood from the American University of Antigua, and something that we've chatted a lot about is global health, and we have health systems that's part of that. So when we talk about the social determinants of health, right, we're talking about other components of this as well. We're talking about, how do they live? What do they eat? What are they doing on a daily basis? Their neighborhoods, their communities. All of this has such a big impact. It's not just about the statistics, but it's really about the entire person's livelihood, their well-being. And, all this comes into play in terms of when we're talking about childhood statistics and whether we have individuals that are able to go into remission, whether we have individuals that unfortunately are not. All this has a big play in it when we talk about global health and when we talk about some of that management aspect of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So segueing now into Dr. Sulowski, speaking about the comparison, the correlation between the numbers here and the numbers on the global stage.
Yes, well, it's hard to compare when you're not looking at, as Dr. Rakowski pointed out, you have to look at per 1,000 births, for example. So I unfortunately, off the top of my head, I can't say how many births we have in Antigua per year. But it's interesting that you can do that because in Canada, where we're from, the number is much higher than that. And so looking at not just incidence, which is kind of a one-off number, but looking at averages and percentages, I think is extremely valuable as this registry takes off. So it's we've been here since the September 1st. It's been our month here now, and as we both wanted to reflect on how welcoming everyone is on the island, it truly stands out to us. But when it comes to seeing patients and diagnosing childhood cancers, it is a challenge. It still is a challenge, and resources, are not what we're accustomed to, unfortunately, and that's just the reality of it. But that doesn't mean that the care and compassion and drive and the bravery we saw in Keyshawn, it still is here and is stronger than ever. And I think that's what's really key, is that as we build and as we expand the Sir Leicester Bird Medical Center, as we expand our registry, the goal of making that number even lower, of finding more cancers sooner if they exist, and really just looking at a global health approach to keeping our children and our families together here where they can get treatment. If not, I know that some of our specialists do come from around the Caribbean and overseas, but the fact that is now part of our treatment program here is really something to be very proud of.
And one thing I will add to that as well is, I think a lot of nations and countries are actually scared to do a registry. And the reason for that is because the cancer rates will go up. Right? Because if you don't have a registry, you don't know how many individuals are actually diagnosed with cancer and what the prevalence is of childhood cancer. But the fact of the matter is, the higher the numbers, the faster we can get to it, the faster we're able to create these treatment plans for individuals that will help them, right? So when we're seeing all these individuals that are unfortunately passing away at very young ages, and then later on we either find out or we don't, these cancer registries, especially what Antigua and Barbuda are doing, is going to help tremendously.
Absolutely. So, good for the authorities, good for the hospital that is working on this cancer registry. Do we know when it will be up and running? Do we know when it will be fully operational, this cancer registry?
Yes.
Or not quite clear yet, or is a work in progress?
It is a work in progress, yes, and I'm sure that Dr. Bell Jarvis would have a little bit more information about that, and I'm not sure if you have any more insight, but happy to provide some more information as we receive updates, because I think it's very important within the nation. I'm sure we'll be hearing about it a little bit more in the media too.
But what is clear, even as that cancer registry is being developed here in Antigua, Barbuda, infant mortality has dropped from 21.6 to 7.5 per 1,000 live births, and that's a 65% decrease. That's extraordinary, Dr. Sulowski.
No, it is. It is something to be proud of. It is an Antiguan statistic, and it is something that has not happened overnight. I can guarantee you that. It's something that many individuals have advocated for, have fought for, have struggled with. You know, if you can imagine back in the year 2000, having that high of more than 1 in 5 unfortunately, mortality at that rate is crushing for families. And again, when we talk about the survivors and we talk about the bravery it takes to move on, there is the survivorship of the family as a unit, those who unfortunately have lost children and family members to childhood cancer and how they move on. And Nicole and I have met individuals who have shared not so nearly as happy or as successful stories as ours are, and there is something to be gained and learned from that as well. And sometimes these registries provide a connection between families and their healthcare providers that is invaluable. And it's not just about raising money, but it's about raising awareness and raising support.
Absolutely. We'll talk a bit later on about the types of childhood cancers that are most prevalent here in the Caribbean and what you've seen in Canada as well. You started talking about it earlier. We'll get back to that shortly. But following up on this issue of access inequality, we looked at the situation, for example, around the world where in the high-income countries, in the developed world, it's a significantly different situation than, say, in the developing world. So the Global South has had a significant challenge where less than 30 or fewer than 30% actually are cured from childhood cancer compared to over 80% in high-income countries. Let's talk about the issue of access and inequality and rising costs, Dr. Rakowski.
Absolutely, and I think there's a
There's
good
a slide for
slide
that, which will show as well.
There's some great information to speak to that, but I think from whether, again, you're looking at the developing side of things versus the more sort of affluent countries, you know, access inequality, what does that actually mean? So good health is the cornerstone of a thriving life, right? So it helps with education, empowers productivity, but really what it does is it enhances overall your quality of life, right? But that requires the physical, the mental, some spiritual for individuals, and communities really struggle, you know, to reach their full potential. And when we take a look at the economic perspective of things, you know, healthcare expenditure is significantly going up, but the actual cost it takes is skyrocketing year after year, right? So we have medical treatments that places a really heavy financial burden, not just on healthcare systems as a whole, but on families, right? And this really challenges government healthcare budgets, right? So we know within different nations, you know, some individuals sort of take away spending from education to drive to healthcare costs, take away from healthcare to drive back to education, or look at environmental issues. It's really hard to maintain that economic equilibrium. We take a look at things, and hence we see that inequality all around the world. There will never be enough dollars to help with healthcare, right? Oftentimes, how many of us in the world have struggled because we haven't been able to pay for a certain, you know, medical expense or medical treatment? I will actually share something that when I had my accident in Iceland, and I learned this the hard way, is I did not have medical insurance at that time. So the costs were astronomical, you know, and I think we get into this in a few slides about talking some of the economic burdens of cancer, but in certain areas, it's as high as 100,000, you know, US dollars per patient, right? So that is a significant burden on families, right? So they're torn to choose, how much debt do I go into for intergenerational debt, right? Affecting, let's say, 20 members of my family to, you know, help one. There's a lot of ethical and moral dilemmas that are involved with that as well.
It's certainly a worrying trend, and certainly in the global south, in the developing world, more has to be done, which we'll of course get to in terms of what more can be done to improve the cure rate and of course improve the access and the matters of equality. You started talking about, Dr. Sulowski, the issue of spotting the warning signs. You talked about the rash, that how it responds to touch, if I can, in layman's term, essentially explain what you were saying, and also fevers and so on, which last beyond 10 days. Our next slide takes us to that, and please, Dr. Sulowski, walk me through these issues as well, which takes us into account the common childhood cancers and the symptoms.
Right. Right. So on the slide there, you see our top 5 most common childhood cancers around the world, and these are very similar in Antigua. And leukemia. So what is leukemia? It is a cancer of the blood itself. And I think we've chatted a bit about that. The CNS, the central nervous system, so it would be commonly called, this is your brain tumors, and your glioma and your medulloblastoma. And I feel for any family out there who recognizes those words, because they are some of the most difficult cancers to treat, because they are, of course, affecting the brain. Next, we have lymphoma. So there's 2 types of common lymphomas, Hodgkin's, and then the NHL was the one that I had, the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So these are cancers that involve your lymph nodes or part of your immune system. And to pause on this one for just a second, many families come to me and they ask, I felt this lump in my child's neck. I felt this in my child's armpit, which is where I had it. But, it's important to realize that lymph nodes are part of your healthy child, and as we know, kids get sick all the time. Anyone who has a child in daycare or starting school for the first time, I'm sure I'll meet you soon if you're not able to access your primary health care professional or your family doctor, because it is a tough time where they are being socialized, but that also means they're being exposed to all their common viruses that go around. And what do your lymph nodes do? They respond to that, and that is a healthy response. So it's important, and I say this to many families, your average child has about 900 lymph nodes in their entire body. Half of them, over 400 of them, are up from your neck up. So many times I've reassured many parents where I found a little one, or they've come in saying, look, I feel something here. And I said, well, yes, I can feel one here. I can feel one in their anterior chain, their posterior chain, all over their head. So as much as I'm scaring families, I'm sure, with the story of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in myself, I wanted to stress the fact that my armpit, I could not close my arm. I could not sit here like this. My arm was actually being pushed out from my body. Again, I don't remember this, but I've heard stories from my parents. And a 3-year-old who has his arm. I was 3 years old. My right arm was literally held in position like this because of the swelling. I could not close it. So that is the type of swelling and the type of cancer that we're talking about, and that is certainly abnormal and something that I would not expect anyone to miss. But I contrast that with our very common lymphadenitis, your common lymph node reaction to your common cold. Moving on.
Before you move on, please, Dr. Sulowski, is it a matter of the length of time that the swelling is there that parents would look out for as a warning sign? Because you mentioned that the lymph nodes would swell, for example, if there's an infection the child has. But is it a length of time that now determines whether or not it's something more serious?
So there's a number of symptoms we look for, or signs that parents can look for, and length of time is part of it, accompanying fever, pain, specific pain to the lymph node itself is again something that we watch for. So a child who is happily playing, going about their daily life, and maybe while brushing their hair, you happen to run your fingers over it, and you notice it, is very different than a child who has become listless, lacking energy, fever for such a long time, and every time you go near them, they run away from you because they don't want that area to be brushed or touched. So it is something that your healthcare provider ultimately should guide you through, and there are other, I'll say, nuances and subtleties to the way we examine lymph nodes, but from an overall perspective, we do look at the whole child and the lymph nodes itself as generally being a good thing to have your lymph nodes active and helping you fight off infection. And these cancers, although it does make our top 5 list, are still thankfully very rare.
Okay, good. Please continue. So that the other types of cancers are.
So the other types of cancers on the top 5, as we go down,
we'll put that up.
Go down the list there. I know number 5 is our
neuroblastoma as well.
Neuroblastoma. So neuroblastoma is a very special type of cancer that often forms in your adrenal gland, which is the gland that sits on top of your kidneys, and it is a form of cancer that is very unique and is often missed, but can be quite subtle. It does make the top 5 list. And I wanted to focus a bit more on the last one, on a Wilms tumor. As much as we are in medicine trying to get away from eponyms, which is things that are named after individuals who diagnose them, of course, Hodgkin's would be another example in lymphoma, but a Wilms tumor is a tumor of the kidney. And again, now we're looking at something that I'd like to point out to parents. When we talk about back pain, really not common in children. You know, sure, if your child's had a fall or an injury or they've been injured on the basketball court or the cricket pitch, sure, there are reasons to have back pain. But for your child to complain for days or weeks on end that they can't sit properly, they're squirming in their chair, they have this pain in their back, and it should be something that we should definitely take seriously. The other way we can often pick up Wilms tumors, because it's involving the kidneys, which are located in your back, in your child's back, is looking at their blood and their pee. And we never really want to see kids peeing frank blood. And that, again, would be a sign. I think most parents would certainly react to that. I've certainly had them react to that. And there are other reasons to have your child peeing blood, something as common as a bladder infection. But it's something that we look for, and we try to put together all the signs for when we're looking to see if a child has a Wilms tumor or a tumor of their kidney.
Okay, all right. So these are the top 5 ones around the world?
Yes.
Are you saying generally it's reflected here in Antigua, Barbuda as well? Okay.
Yes.
The other side of the slide takes us to the type B symptoms. Tell me about this.
Right. So these are the ones that we've already briefly touched on, other than the 4th one. But type B symptoms, often very actually much associated with lymphoma, are prolonged fevers, drenching night sweats. So many times, and now, you know, Nicole and I are coming from Canada, so it's an adjustment, and the weather here certainly plays a role. But we're talking about the level of night sweats where your child has to have either their pajamas or their bed sheets actually changed. This is not just, oh, you know, the air conditioning didn't work that night or they were a little bit sweaty. This is what they call drenching night sweats. Significant weight loss, I think we've touched on, and again, more than 10% weight loss in a 6-month period is certainly concerning. And the other one, again, now speaking to our second most common childhood cancer, the one involving the central nervous system, the CNS, the brain tumors, is headaches. You know, and headaches happen. Many children, unfortunately, suffer from headaches. Maybe it's a reflection of some of the social media pressures that our teenagers now face. But when there's something very specific and unique about morning headaches, I am much more worried about the child who wakes up first thing in the morning because they have a headache. Not that they woke up, they're very stressed, they maybe have a fever, and oh, now their head hurts a little bit. If your child's headache is waking them up either in the middle of the night, or the first thing they do is they wake up in the morning, they have such a bad headache that they need to go to the bathroom and vomit, these are signs that pressure in their head may be increasing, and that would be a sign of a brain tumor. So although many children and many families deal with children's headaches, and it's perfectly fine to give your child a medication to help with a headache, if your child is waking up in the middle of the night because of headaches specifically, seek out care, see your family doctor, your pediatrician, or if necessary, come see us at the Sir Lester Bird Medical Center, because morning headaches or headaches that wake a child up for sleep are very concerning.
What's the youngest child you've diagnosed with cancer?
Good question.
Well, in my experience, I have worked in Canada much longer than I've been in Antigua. We've had children's cancers really present in the NICU. So we're talking the first month of life, which is shocking, and it is something that is, again, rare. However, it is not unheard of that children will actually present with cancer almost around the time of birth. Many miscarriages and unfortunately pregnancies that do not make it to term can sometimes be caused by that, and that's a whole other struggle for families, and obviously limited treatment in those opportunities. But yes, it can happen at any age. In Canada, we have a pediatric cutoff of their 18th birthday. Here in Antigua, we have a pediatric cutoff of 16. But childhood cancer can really happen at any age. And these ones that I've quoted are more specific, as Nicole pointed out in a slide earlier. Dr. Rakowski mentioned that it's under 20 .
Wow.
A lot of statistics.
So a child in the NICU, in the neonatal intensive care unit with cancer, I can't imagine how intensive and sensitive the treatment modalities must be.
No, and the team of specialists that need to come together to manage that is truly a testament to healthcare in Canada, and it's something that, besides the sheer financial cost that comes with it, it's It's the amount of knowledge and information and teamwork that goes into managing children at that age. And to be fair, at any age, it is a team approach. And I think one of the things that Dr. Rakowski and I have really reflected on here in Antigua is just how welcoming everyone has been, and the camaraderie that I've already felt at the Sir Lester Bird Medical Center is really second to none. Everyone's willing to help. Everyone's willing to share a story, to share directions, as we've learned to drive on the other side of the road here in Antigua. It's
that's important.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, the potholes too. Yes. But it's really a team of specialists that come together to look after children and specifically children with cancer.
Let me formally welcome both of you as well to Antigua, Barbuda, and of course, in your case, Dr. Sulowski, to the hospital. And I get a strong feeling, I don't want to be a clairvoyant, but I have a very strong feeling yourself will soon be welcome there as well. But we'll see. Yes, let's see how that pans out. But extraordinary, we're going to talk about the management now, of course, and this is where Dr. Rakowski will come in terms of how do you engage with the parents? How do you provide that level of support, the health management side? But our next slide, before we go to our next break, I want you, Dr. Rakowski, please, to talk us through this one, taking action when something feels wrong. And this, of course, takes into account what needs to happen from kind of community perspective. Please go ahead.
Absolutely, and as you mentioned, it's that community that really helps to drive a lot of this. So the first one I want to talk about is just creating healthy habits, right? So we see a lot of sedentary lifestyles, not just here, not just in Canada, not just in the United States, but everywhere around the world, right? And I think starting those healthy habits as soon as possible in adolescence or, even before then makes a huge difference to someone and they're growing up. So, having that regular exercise routine, making sure that your diet is balanced, full of nutrients, full of vitamins, really helps to prevent some of those complex chronic conditions that we see as individuals, grow up. How many children are we now seeing that have diabetes, right? And significantly, worsening as they're getting older. But really that helps to promote some of that long-term well-being. And the second one is regular checkups. And understandably, in lower developed countries, regular checkups can be very, very difficult. So having those education sessions, if there's any mobile clinics, encouraging families and community members to sort of draw together to go to those. But any sort of routine health screenings that are available to the community, for early detection of not just cancers, but any other illnesses really goes a long way in improving sort of the long-term trajectory of a child's journey. And then again, as they go into adolescence, because it really helps in terms of management when it comes, to school and not having to take a child out of school, not having to prevent them from being socially engaged with their friends, but also, really encouraging them to just be involved with their everyday, day-to-day activities of healthy living.
When we come back from this break, both yourselves, Dr. Rakowski and Dr. Sulowski, will speak with us about the issue of survivorship and what that entails. And of course, I'm pretty sure you'll reference your own personal journeys and your own personal travails that you have both overcome, to your credit, to both of your credits, for overcoming those personal tragedies and personal challenges, which you'll also give sage advice to others about. When we come back from our final break here on House Calls, we'll delve into this issue of survivorship and how there can be support for the families who have children with cancer. Childhood cancer. You heard Dr. Sulowski say from even in the NICU, in the neonatal intensive care unit, children have been diagnosed with cancer. As you look at one of the initiatives to raise awareness, which happened just a few days ago, the Michael Kidd Foundation raising awareness about childhood cancer in collaboration with, of course, the Sir Lester Bird Medical Center and other stakeholders, ensuring that the message is loud and clear and sent in a loud and clear fashion. The Michael Kidd Foundation, in collaboration with the Pediatric Department at Sir Lester Bird Medical Center, having this initiative in the past few days. And may we commend this initiative and any other that continues to raise awareness, whether in September or any other month. When we come back, much more on House Calls as we reflect on the tremendous journey and the courage beyond his years of Kishon John, who is just 11 years old has completed chemotherapy, rung the bell, and is now looking to beat cancer. We wish him and his family all the best. When we come back, much more on this powerful edition of House Calls. Looking to beat childhood cancer, but we have to do it together. We'll come back, much more to us.
Antigua, get ready to put your health first. The Medical Benefits Scheme's Health and Community Fair is happening Sunday, October 12th, 2025, from 1:30 to 5:30 p.m. at the Villa Polyclinic. Enjoy free health checks and exams, counseling, wellness sessions, mindful eating tips, and fitness activities. Relax with therapeutic massages, sample healthy foods, and pick up seedlings for your garden. Meet our trusted health partners and get screened for breast and prostate health, HPV, diabetic foot care, dental, and eyes. It's fun, informative, and all about your health. See you at the MBS Fair. The Medical Benefits Scheme. We care.
Honey, how about us go to English Hammer for lunch?
Oh, I'm not feeling well, babe. You go by yourself. Bring me back something later.
All right.
All right. Hey, babe, meet me by the Cedar Valley Golf Course. We're going to roam till dusk. I'm taking you for lunch.
According to Jamaicans, Slijay is getting bun. And we are not talking about the kind that is sold at Dawn Till Dusk Bakery. But let's not jump to conclusions just yet. Dawn Till Dusk Bakery now has two amazing locations, Cedar Valley Main Road and Long Street, St. John's. Don't miss our Saturday and Sunday morning specials. Dawn Till Dusk Bakery, a place for the entire family. And well, you see what we mean.
Life moves fast. Be prepared with Sagicor. Learn more at sagicor.com.
Announcing Antigua's newest full-service pharmacy, Omnicare, situated in the North Walk Commercial Center at the corner of Friars Hill and Wetherills Road, offering a specialized pharmaceutical and healthcare service to the rural North community by qualified, experienced, and friendly pharmacists and skincare professionals. Convenient location, ample parking, private consultations, same-day drop-off and pickup service. Senior citizens and students enjoy a 10% discount. Contact us at 462-4411. WhatsApp 268-727-6664. We're open Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Omnicare Pharmacy, the pharmacy that cares.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. Going into our final segment here on House Calls. This evening, we're discussing the issue of childhood cancer. It is, after all, the final day of Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and we're unpacking all you need to know about it, the warning signs, the most common childhood cancers, and yes, a child as young as in the NICU, just after birth, the neonatal intensive care unit, has been, in Dr. Sulowski's experience, has been diagnosed with childhood cancer. It can happen at any age, like literally just after birth. So we're talking about a situation which must be so tremendously traumatic for families and must be so difficult to deal with. And that's why it's important to have that support and that awareness to see how the entire community can play a part in that. Our guests are Dr. Christopher Sulowski, who is a consultant leading the pediatric casualty at Celeste Bird Medical Center. He's a childhood cancer survivor himself. He was diagnosed at age 3 in Canada, where he's native Canada. And his wife is Dr. Nicole Rakowski, who is an expert in health management. She's also a global thought leader in health, wellness, and patient-centered care. She's also an internationally renowned bodybuilding athlete as well, notwithstanding her very, very difficult accident in Iceland, which almost put paid to that, but she has shown tremendous courage and resilience to come back from that. So our two doctors in the house, husband and wife, have shown through their personal journeys and their medical journeys, that they can really give you sage advice because they've lived it. All right. Thank you so much for staying with us. When we,
Thank you.
Let's go through this issue of survivorship. And talk to me about this, please, Dr. Rakowski, because that's your forte in health management and how you can give advice to people about survivorship. Talk me through this, please. There's a slide for that, actually, which we'll put up shortly.
Absolutely. So, you know, having the patient's voice truly makes a big difference. Whether it doesn't matter which part of their healthcare trajectory they're from, whether they're, you know, going through something very tough or going through the actual remission periods. But first we want to take a look at, you know, what is the definition of scope of survivorship? So this is something that really begins after treatment, but, you know, it challenges the physical, emotional, social, and, you know, can really continue for years. This includes growth, development, education. What are some of those psychosocial health factors, and not just, you know, being disease-free? But really what I want to focus on is that patient and family engagement, right? So this involves age-appropriate participation in those decisions. And obviously, you know, if the patient is capable versus not capable, that makes a difference. But encouraging, as we saw in Keyshawn's case, you know, him being informed from the very beginning, being able to advocate for himself, you know, being informed himself from his mother, and having then that confidence, right, in knowing what is happening. And, you know, that really helps to build that sense of control in a period that's often dominated by a lot of medical interventions. Cancer is a very, very complex path. It involves a lot of different treatment decisions. As Dr. Sulowski mentioned, it involves a lot of different healthcare professionals that need to come together in order to, you know, have that very strong dynamic when leading to different treatment and management options. So making sure that the right individuals are at the table really helps to sort of provide that lens for families to be able to make decisions together, but also understanding, you know, what is it that they need to be involved in, and what does that mean for the child themselves?
Before we continue, because there's actually more on this issue of survivorship.
Yeah.
Engaging with a patient who happens to be a child in these cases, as childhood cancer we're discussing, how much do you share with a child? Because how do you ensure that balance of sharing information but not frightening the child? And I'm pretty sure one of the questions the child is going to ask is, "Mommy, Daddy, doctor, am I going to die?"
Exactly.
How do you make that balance? How do you ensure that the balance is strong?
It's a great question. It's one that we are asked all the time. And, you know, you never want a child to look you in the face and say, "Am I going to die?" And if the answer is yes, it's heartbreaking, no matter what the situation is. To give them that answer is heartbreaking. So what I usually do from the health management perspective, and, you know, there's some teams that are very fortunate to have, you know, an ethics table and child life specialist in other areas where those individuals are not necessarily present, that don't have that expertise. You know, we always say to work with the families in terms of what is their family dynamic at home. You know, are they more sort of blunt to the point, or working with the child to better understand what it is that they're going through, but framing it in a positive lens, that, you know, this is all a learning experience, that we're in this together. And perhaps I will share one maybe very important story, and it was from myself working with different care coordinators in Canada that can resonate, this experience resonates to all across the world. And so myself, I was going into this individual's home in a very, very affluent neighborhood in Canada, in Ontario, one of the regions that we live. And this individual was suffering and was diagnosed with cancer earlier on. He was in adolescence. And at this point in time, he lived on his own. So he was a teenager. But again, very affluent home that his parents had sort of left for him. They went away on vacation, but he was living, unfortunately, on his own for quite a long time. And when we walked inside, you know, this individual did not have any running water. Meanwhile, living in an extremely affluent neighborhood, he did not have access to healthy, nutritious foods. And our first reaction is to get this individual running water, to get them the necessary food in their fridge that they need for any sort of daily activities. But when talking to the patient, they didn't want any of that. The only thing that they wanted is to be reconnected with their parents. And until that happened, they did not care about getting better. They did not care about having healthy foods, about engaging in physical activity and making a difference on their own. So sometimes it's taking that additional 5 minutes to talk to a patient and, you know, sort of talking about capabilities. This individual was an adolescent, again, that was diagnosed with cancer. And understanding that their voice matters as well, and really listening to what it is that they want at the end of the day as well.
That's crucially important. That takes us to the continuation, the other slide, the next slide right after, which talks about this issue of patient needs and the child's perspective.
Exactly. So it really, again, that was, I think, a strong example that you have to consider the child's perspectives, the needs and priorities. And listening to both the child and the family, it helps to improve, again, the long-term quality of life. And this helps to address some of those unique challenges like school reintegration. You know, what does that mean for their social relationships with friends? What does that mean for their emotional health? You know, how can we still incorporate a balance that deals with their hobbies and things that make them really happy in life, right? How do we help to incorporate that to really create that strong patient experience? And the fourth one is supporting long-term health, right? So not just, we don't want to deal with care once it's happened, it's the prevention, right? It's how do we deal with the mental health, the aftermath of receiving bad news? How do we tell information in a way that is meaningful, but that can really help from a positive lens? And we encourage, monitoring for late effects of treatment. So this can include different growth. And I know that Dr. Sulowski has spoken more to the clinical aspect of things, but this can involve, again, a multidisciplinary team. So it's not just primary care, it's not just an educational support, it's talking to the teachers at school, it's talking to camp counselors, it's talking to the recreational facilities management to see, this is what my child is going through. How can we help to create an environment that supports them given the situation that they're in? So really that oncological team, as many of us want to think about, is just that clinical in nature. It's not, it stems beyond that to the social supports. And again, I'm going to shout out to Dr. Leslie Wallman, who leads the global health program at the American University of Antigua, which I'm a first-year medical student at. It's truly those social determinants of health. It's not just from the moment a patient enters into the hospital. It's how do they live within a community, within a neighborhood that helps to support them in sort of their overall wellness, their physical and social sort of dimensions of health.
So it's a holistic effort that's needed.
Absolutely.
From so many stakeholders.
Yes.
I'm going to come back to the clinical side for a second. I'm going to come back to this issue of health management shortly as well. Dr. Rakowski. Dr. Sulowski, have you diagnosed any child in Antigua, Barbuda so far, or you've just been here for a few weeks?
So having started at the Sir Lester Bird on September 1st, in my time here, I actually have already diagnosed one child with cancer who came through the pediatric casualty office, and it's very challenging. I think one of the hardest things we do in both of our roles, and Dr. Rakowski and I met in Ontario and Hamilton, working at Hamilton Health Sciences in her role as a patient experience specialist and my role as the pediatric emergency physician. And that was, working with families and hearing, as Dr. Rakowski mentioned, the patient voice. And when we talk about the art of medicine and the skill it takes to break bad news, it's something that we can all always improve on and get better at, and it is obviously one of the hardest parts of our job as physicians to do it. That's why I know that the Sir Lester Bird Cancer Symposium that's coming up on October 4th, one of our speakers actually specializes and will be speaking about how to break bad news, and along with the other speakers is highlighting not just necessarily childhood cancer, but all cancers.
As we look at the symposium.
Dr. Yazigi, I believe, is speaking to breaking bad news and how to share what can be a life-altering, certainly a family-altering diagnosis when it comes to cancer. So, this is not only raising awareness, but bringing specialists together to really delve deep into cancer. This is not specifically to childhood cancer, but overall to cancer. So we are highlighting this symposium, which is coming up just this coming week on October 4th, this coming weekend. And we encourage anyone who's found our conversation tonight to be stimulating and encouraging about learning about cancer, that they reach out. And there's still obviously a way to attend the conference, both in person and I believe still virtually now. There's an option as well. So if that's something of interest to our viewers, to learn more, not just about childhood cancer, but cancer in general and cancer care, this is an amazing amazing symposium that's coming up, conference that's just less than a week away now.
By the way, Dr. Hannibal Yaziji will have him on our show next week to talk about another type of cancer, this time breast cancer, because October, starting tomorrow, is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So we're moving from prostate cancer and childhood cancer awareness to breast cancer awareness. Dr. Hannibal Yaziji joins us next week. And he's also talking about, of course, this symposium. He'll be one of the featured speakers there. You talk about breaking bad news. The impact on the doctors themselves. I want to hear from both of you, starting with you, Dr. Sulowski. The mental, psychological impact of having to tell a child and his or her parents that it's a diagnosis of cancer. Yeah. How difficult is that?
The first thing I'd like to say is that when you have a supportive partner and someone who truly understands what you're going through, that there is no way you can say thank you enough to that. And I am fortunate to have Nicole in my life, and we share everything. So we're honored to be here together and hearing about this opportunity. I couldn't have seen myself doing it without her. And after a shift that has not necessarily had a cancer diagnosis but has been challenging, I think a lot of healthcare providers will lean on family, on their loved ones, on their partners, on the other important individuals in their life. And there is that bond that healthcare workers have, I think, that is quite unique. It's challenging. It's one of the reasons that burnout, unfortunately, is prevalent in the healthcare industry. But on the more positive side, it's something that can bring you closer together, and you can gain a true understanding of what you're going through if you're able to share that with someone. So for anyone out there who is a healthcare worker and feels like they are alone in it, please do reach out. There's lots of resources that I'm aware of, more so in Canada than here, but these types of situations where healthcare burnout from having to break bad news, to tell a mother that you believe based on the test results that their child has cancer, it's really a true challenge, and it's something that's, when we talk about the survivorship and we talk about the burden of working with these huge responsibility, it's something that I'm sure I'm not alone with, and it's not unique to Canada or Antigua, but it's a challenge. I know that the curriculum in many medical schools, especially the American University of Antigua, is covering more aspects now of health, wellness, and looking at the overall physician and trying to prepare the next generation of physicians for the challenges that we've always faced, but now at least we're able to talk about them more.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. Before you're coming, Dr. Rakowski, we have about 5 minutes left on our show. We'll get Dr. Rakowski's response on that issue of breaking bad news. Then we'll go to the financial burden of childhood cancer. We'll look at local realities and the global perspectives. We'll compare what happens in terms of the costs, because there are the costs to the psychological burden and the psychological cost, obviously, but there's also the real world monetary cost. We'll talk about that in a short while. By the way, so we have about 5 minutes, but if you have a burning question, you can call us in 4622996, or you can send a quick comment on Facebook. We'll try to get that running quickly to our esteemed panel of Doctors Sulowski and Rakowski, husband and wife. First time ever on our show having a husband and wife team on the show. So 4622996 if you have a burning question, I might be able to take one or two, or on Facebook as well. So Dr. Rakowski, this issue of the impact on the doctor, him or herself, of breaking bad news. Talk to me about that.
I mean, I can definitely say, even from working with Dr. Sulowski for such a long time, and I think it's quite rare, I think that, you have two healthcare workers that work together as a couple, right? And I think, there's really no better example than us two working together. But as Dr. Sulowski mentioned, having someone there to listen, to be a sounding board at the end of the day when you've had an 8-hour, 12-hour, 16-hour shift makes all the difference in the world. The number of times you have to break bad news doesn't make it easier every time. And I always like to say to individuals, take the time to pause, reflect, and nourish yourselves afterwards, right? Take 5 minutes after a case. you don't have to jump right back into the next one. Burnout is real. Burnout is something that is faced by healthcare professionals every single day, and it affects our next case and the next one, and it doesn't get easier. It's breaking bad news can be just as hard every single time because every single case is so unique, is so different, is so challenging. You get to know the families, and the closer you get to the families, the more emotional of attacks it can be on yourself, but also on the families. But then you sort of have that, individuals you see sort of trying to distance themselves, but then you don't have that love and support, and that empathy is what families really need and deserve at the end of the day, especially going through very hard chronic conditions like cancer of individuals having.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
It must be tough. Hats off to doctors like yourselves who have to do that. It is, there's, in my view, sometimes as hard an impact on the doctor, him or herself, as it is on the family to whom you're passing that news on to. Before going to the final two slides, the financial burden and also how you can be part of the solution, just very quickly, it occurs to me, are there any risk factors that we know about, Dr. Sulowski, in terms of the environmental factors, hereditary factors that perhaps predispose some children to childhood cancer? Are there, how modifiable are these factors? We talk about a lot of these shows. I picked that up, by the way, from talking to doctors. Modifiable factors and non-modifiable risk factors. How are they, in your view?
Well, the first thing that immediately comes to my mind with response to that question, and it touches on what Dr. Rakowski mentioned when she recounted her stories of concussions. So concussions, I want to say first off, concussions do not cause cancer. That is not the link I'm trying to make here. But as a pediatric emergency medicine or pediatric casualty specialist, we often see children who are brought in because they've had a traumatic injury to their head. And again, one of those moments where if you Google it or chat GPT it, you might think, well, here we are, we're at a facility that has a CT scanner, a CAT scanner, and let's just do the CAT scan, make sure he's fine, and he can get back out and play next week because the team has a championship. The number of times I've heard that specific scenario, unfortunately, and as a responsible healthcare provider, as a responsible physician, knowing, in response to your question, that radiation from X-rays and specifically from CAT scans, from CT scans, leads to cancer. The link between radiation and cancer is clear. It's why even when you go to the dentist, you'll have a lead apron put on you, or walls in the radiology department are lined with lead. We know that blocking ionizing radiation from a child and from an adult is a great way to prevent cancer. So there's been some studies, and as much as I don't want to quote a lot of research in today's presentation, the study that we look at when it comes to the PCARN rules of when a child should have a CAT scan after a head injury. Any physician now who's into pediatric casualty, pediatric ER will know these rules, and what it comes down to in layman's terms is I will not CT scan every child who takes a knock to their head, because I know that for every 1,000 CT scans I do, I will likely cause one brain tumor, to put it into very specific numbers. So in my career, I probably have done somewhere close to 1,000 CT scans. If I had not followed these rules, I probably would have done closer to 20,000. You really cut down the number of scans you do, knowing that radiation, although it provides us a lot of information, and there are individuals and there are tests that need to have it done, there are situations where you must CAT scan a child's head, but the knowing when not to is where, again, the science of medicine tells us very clearly that ionizing radiation or X-rays, if done improperly or too frequently, or specifically the number of CAT scans we do, can actually lead to, as we saw on our slide, the second most common type of cancer in children, and that is the central nervous system.
Any hereditary factors? Any hereditary implications?
Well, there are different cancers that certainly do run in families. There are cancer syndromes where you will see the same type of cancer progressing through families. They are not the top five, as far as I remember, but they are quite different. So genetics always does play a role into it. Many times we'll ask, and I will generally ask in longer consultations, anything in the family history that you worry about. And I try not to specifically peg out the cancer or point it out, but many families will say, well, you know what, the diabetes runs in our family, or childhood cancer. can certainly be one of the ones. That's rarer to mention in that list of questions or those responses you get to that question, but there are some genetics that, unfortunately, of course, we can't change, but something we certainly consider in making the diagnosis.
Okay, this is a lightning round, Drs. Sulowski and Rakowski. We'll put up this slide about the financial burden of childhood cancer. May I ask you to just do this very, very quickly for me, please, because we're literally out of time. Let's talk about Dr. Rakowski in terms of Antigua versus the global perspective.
Right. So, I mean, in Antigua, there's a free treatment. I know Dr. Sulowski touched on this a little bit. So we've got the medical benefit scheme for eligible residents. So families, however, can still face transport costs, income loss, accommodation, right? So how many of us have to take time off work, right? So these referrals also that we have to do abroad can increase costs significantly, right? So now a family that was supposed to receive treatment locally now has to travel somewhere, right, to a different island or abroad to get these treatments. Globally, so average treatment can be anywhere roughly from $833,000 per patient. Low-income countries, we see that from $10,000 to $15,000 per patient. And again, there's a lot of indirect costs are associated with that, as I mentioned, transportation, accommodation, and so forth. And strategies to reduce burden. So, you know, again, I'm coming from the background from the policy management perspective, right? So we need to continue to work with organizational, international bodies, and again, that community support, awareness, fundraisers, as we just saw recently on Sunday, to raise awareness for childhood cancer and supports. But really, the takeaway that I want to drive home at the end of the day is that childhood cancer's financial burden is a multifaceted issue. It's not one that's just unique to Antigua or Barbuda. It's in Europe, it's different Asian nations locally, but we see it, and global action is truly needed everywhere where we take a look at it.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap the discussion here. I feel like we could go on for another half an hour or an hour, but this has been extraordinary. What you've shared, both of you, is eye-opening and powerful and riveting and profound and personal, deeply personal for both of you, especially Dr. Sulowski, who's been a childhood cancer survivor. We want to thank you both for sharing your experiences and sharing your knowledge and your insights in relation to how families can cope and why it is necessary that there be multi-stakeholder support in a holistic battle against childhood cancer. We have to win together because we stand together so that we can win together. And as you heard Kishon John, who's just 11 years old, extraordinary grit and determination and tenacity shown beyond, I mean, really, you know, beyond his years, belying his years, giving us that example about beating cancer. And he's had strong support from his family and his community. And we have to really make sure that it is a support system that is broad-based, that is multi-stakeholder. This has been another powerful edition of House Calls. Let me thank Dr. Nicole Rakowski, who is an expert in health management. Her husband is Dr. Christopher Sulowski, who is the leading consultant at the Celeste Baird Medical Center, leading the pediatric casualty of the hospital. They've just been here for about a few weeks, actually, since the start of this month, and they have already garnered so much insight that they're sharing with you. We want to thank both of you and welcome again. May your stay be long and productive and mutually beneficial.
And thank you so much for having us here. And again, if anyone has any questions afterwards, they're happy to, you know, we're happy to take questions and field any requests as well.
Yes, yeah, no,
absolutely. And how can people reach out to you, both of you?
So the easiest way to do it would be through Nicole's Rakowski Nicole on Instagram. We monitor that, slide, and it's on our last slide there. So happy to take any questions, and of course we are honored to be here. And thank you for Antigua for a very warm welcome and a very special first month.
There you go. There you go on Instagram. That's the handle, Rakowski Nicole. Got it?
Yes.
Perfect. Excellent. And of course, next week on House Calls, we stay with the subject of cancer, this time breast cancer awareness. Dr. Hannibal Yazigi. I always say to him, he has a powerful first name, Hannibal Yazigi. He joins us to discuss this issue of breast cancer awareness. It is such an issue near and dear to the hearts of so many families, including my own. Really appreciate their company. Let me thank both Dr. Sulowski and Dr. Rakowski. We look forward to you joining us next week for another powerful edition of House Calls. We stay with the subject of cancer. Terry Andrew comes up next with the news at 10. Bye-bye. I'm Garfield Burford.